Hello, this is Harper. Welcome to Pages and Reels. Today, I wanted to talk about a movie that's not an adaptation, but one that has stayed with me for many years. Also, surprisingly, I haven't found too much analysis of it, which I feel is weird because to me it's such a rich movie. So I have taken it upon myself to analyze it. So, spoiler alert for the movie, please go watch it and let your mind mull on it for a while, because it is such a compelling watch, especially for this day and age of seeking quick gratification. So just a quick summary. The movie centers around Margot, played by Michelle Williams, a young tourist guide author in her late 20s who is married to a loving, caring chef Lou, played by Seth Rogen. They make a sweet couple, and you get the feeling they've been married for a while, long enough for the honeymoon period of excitement and tension to have long passed. They've settled into a comforting, familiar and affectionate dynamic, living in a sweet, colourful home that is good to hold parties in. Margot travels due to the nature of her job, and it is at one such expedition that she meets Daniel, who turns out to live just across the road from her. The chemistry between the two is clear, and on the cab ride home, the two of them are clearly, thoroughly enjoying each other's company. Though Margot discloses to Daniel that she's married early in the movie, that doesn't stop either of them from accidentally on purpose hanging out with each other. This culminates in a final admission from Margot to Lou that she has of course fallen for the boy across the road, and he tenderly and tearfully lets her go, freeing her to pursue her relationship with Daniel. The movie doesn't end there though. We get to see what happens to Margot and Daniel's relationship, which initially is full of passion and vibrancy, as honeymoon periods often are. But with time, it settles into a dynamic that is very reminiscent of the relationship that Margot had with Lou, but just a lesser version of it. Even introducing new people into their beds seems to have not done the trick of sustaining the earlier passion of their relationship. Meanwhile, Lou moves on, and when Margot eventually asks if he is willing to try again with her, he gently but firmly declines. The last poignant scene of the movie is of Margot sitting alone on an amusement park ride, a clear metaphor about how excitement is always doomed to end. There is a side story with her sister-in-law Geraldine, which somewhat intersects with Margot's situation. Geraldine is struggling with her alcoholism and says a few biting words to Margot when she leaves Lou. So, as most people have, I have watched many rom-coms and romantic dramas and the like. Now at this older age, I find myself rolling my eyes a lot at them, but when I was a teenager, I thought they were just so amazing. Even the problematic ones. Never Been Kissed comes to mind. Of course, many of these movies focus on the newness of love. The newness of a developing romance, the delicious excitement, the tension and the thrill. That's what hooks us as we vicariously experience the exquisite anxiety of the two main love interests. Especially if there is intense chemistry between the two actors, you come away often thinking, what a shame they don't actually date in real life. Take This Waltz, however, is an anti-romance drama. You want a cold dose of reality? Watch this movie. Are you in a loving, familiar and comforting relationship where you feel restless? Watch this movie. The movie also navigates the moral grey area of questioning your relationship and your partner, as well as the question, where is the line when there is no physical breach of boundaries in a relationship? The movie was cast well all around, understated and quiet, without the dramatic overacting you sometimes get with movies of this genre. The cinematography was all cutesy and quirky, belying the seriousness of the movie's internal messages. The architecture looks colourful even when it's not, and the rich palette with the saturation slightly raised gives it almost a cartoon-like feel to it. All the characters have creative jobs, an author, a chef, and an artist/rickshaw driver of all things. Trendy, Everyone seems so trendy. Margot, the central character, is not overly likable, and considering her overall behaviour, her childlike mannerisms make her even more jarring and unlikable. This is coming from someone of Korean descent, where culturally we accept and actually have a word for childlike behaviour in adults. It's called aegyo. Google it if you need to. AEGYO. So, if I even find her annoying and unpleasant, she truly is. What a turd. Of course, I don't shame her for what she felt. Her restlessness, her questioning, and her desire for excitement is totally normal, common, and human. One of the difficulties of navigating a long-term relationship is understanding how to manage these very human emotions with honesty and integrity. It's what she does with those emotions that I blame her for. She could have approached it in so many ways. Considering she's married, she could have avoided contact with Daniel when she realized what her feelings were and focused on developing her marriage by communicating with her husband, Lou. Lou clearly loved his wife, and had she come to him with genuine care and honesty, he would have listened and worked through things with her. Cheating, and I know technically Margot doesn't cheat, but for the sake of the argument, let's just say she cheated for the moment. Cheating happens through a series of choices. It doesn't just happen. It occurs when you ignore all the seemingly minor red flags that lead up to the final crescendo. Margot could have pulled back at any time. After the first cab ride with Daniel, she could have avoided seeing him. She could not have gone to the shop so early in the morning when she knew she would run into him. She could have said no when he asked her to spend the day with her. She could have not gone for a swim with him. She could have not gone to that bar with him where they have their cringy X-rated conversation. She could have not. But she did. And because she did, she blew up her marriage with a man who was good for her and that she did love underneath all her immaturity. She was just blinded by her craving for excitement. And what I'm about to say next might cause some controversy, but I am coming down harder on Margot because she was married. Marriage makes things very simple. You made a choice. You swore to close all other options, so it's black and white. Had she not been married, it would have been different. That's not to say I would condone her behaviour necessarily if she hadn't been married, and I certainly don't condone cheating in any type of relationship. But when you're not married, I feel you're implicitly saying, I don't want to make that promise to you, and I don't. The bottom line is, if you're not married, one of the reasons is because you don't want to make your relationship do or die. Thus, there is more flexibility, especially when it comes to leaving. You should still navigate your relationship with integrity though, married or not married, of course, because there are still emotions involved. But Margot is married, so for her it was simple. She should have shut Daniel down the moment she recognized her feelings threatened her marriage. But she didn't. Also, I hated Margot's cringy little soliloquy when she was up in Daniel's apartment and looking at the sketch he drew of her. Maybe it was supposed to be all deep and philosophical, but all those words and intellectualizing to avoid saying what was actually going on, and that is, she just wanted to be ploughed by a new sausage because it offered the excitement that she craved. My eyes broke from rolling them so hard. You're just an immature brat, Margot, who is unable to reconcile yourself to reality. Maybe go do some volunteer work. Daniel, I don't approve of his behaviour, of course, but he didn't make any promises to anyone, so he is less guilty. And he does try to leave. It's clear later he wants to end his relationship with Margot, but no doubt felt too guilty to do it because she ended her marriage for him. Sloppy. He is not a mature person either, and he should have seen Margot for who she was. Someone who would end her marriage to a good man when a new flavour came along. That's not promising. What exactly did you think would happen, Daniel? Geraldine. I don't know much about alcoholism, so it's difficult for me to make a commentary on that. But I felt that despite her struggles, Geraldine was more self-aware than Margot and obviously knew what was going on between Margot and Daniel and tries to warn Margot without directly doing so. I do feel for Geraldine's husband. The guy seemed super sweet and supportive, and I can imagine how difficult it must have been for him to be married to Geraldine. They have a daughter too. I would have shown them more grace if they had broken up, especially since their daughter's safety is in question. Lou. Lou is clearly a good guy, even though there were moments as a woman where I thought he missed things that were very obvious. I was like, dude, leaving a bored, restless wife alone to sort herself out is not the way to go about things. Again, not blaming him. Ultimately, Margot was responsible and accountable for the decisions she made. But trying to ignore the issue, hoping it will all go away, is the last thing you should do to someone feeling like Margot. Margot would have preferred an all-out screaming match than the muted underreaction that Lou was giving her. At least she would have gotten the excitement she wanted. But that's nothing, and certainly doesn't absolve Margot of anything. And what Lou said to her was true. You don't go out to dinner with your husband to catch up and talk like you're on a first date. And if you do want to talk Margot, then why don't you ask your husband some interesting, thought-provoking questions, instead of sitting there waiting for him to recreate something that has long passed? I don't know, ask him how he's feeling about his cookbook. It's always nerve-wracking publishing a book, so I'm sure giving him the space to express his anxieties might be nice. Just saying is all. That's something you would do even for a friend. Anyway, great movie. I feel a necessary watch for anyone who is in a long-term relationship. It's tough, and it's only human for a type of existential dread to come upon us when we feel as if we're hamsters on a wheel, just going through the motions. It's up to us to guess what happened to Margot after that last melancholic amusement park ride. My guess is that Margot and Daniel eventually broke up, and that letting go of Lou remained a painful regret for her. As to whether she learned her lesson and matured, who knows? Maybe she never found a better guy than Lou, and so continued holding on to his memory despite any subsequent relationships she may have had. I feel like Lou would have found someone else though, maybe even married again, but I guess that's all up to our imagination. Until next time, bye!